Right, I was thinking about standing below there, but apparently that doesn't work great with our sound system, and so I feel funny that I'm walking in front of our very prestigious panel. So let me just kick off this incredible moment for Phoenix, and particularly for Rasa Legal, who is expanding from Utah and chose Arizona to be the second site. My name is Cynthia Lietz. I serve as Dean of ASU's Watts College of Public Service and Community Solutions. You're here this building is not just the Watts College. We've got multiple colleagues in this building, but our administration is located here. And so I was just going to spend a moment as Dean welcoming you to Arizona State University, if we have folks who have not been here before. Give a little bit of an orientation to why this work is the kind of work that we want to support and get behind, and then get out of the way and hand over to the experts who have a lot of good things to talk about. Also super excited about the community work that's going to be happening across the street this afternoon. So let me start first by saying it's not that uncommon that community members and leaders get introduced somewhere along the way to a leader at ASU. Sometimes it's directly to a dean, sometimes it starts with the president or provost, and so I as dean may get an email introducing me to somebody and talking a little bit about their work. So it's a great thing to do. I get to meet lots of incredible people. So that happened when I had a meeting set up with Noella Sudbury about 4 months ago, maybe. And within 5 minutes of being on Zoom together and hearing her story and the incredible work that she is doing, I was like, sign me up. Not only is her passion for access and creating opportunities for people here in Arizona completely aligned with the Watts College as well as Arizona State University, the innovative approach of scaling some of the work that she's trying to accomplish in her organization through an innovative technology solution, again, is completely aligned with the ways that Arizona State University wants to advance solutions. So we are super proud for your first launch event that you would be here at an ASU campus and working with us. All right, so if you don't know much about ASU, we have 4 campuses in the Phoenix metropolitan area. You're here at the downtown campus. We also have the more traditional campus at Tempe, our West Valley campus that direction, the Poly campus out in the East Valley, and then we have more than 50%, just a little bit more than 50% of our students, undergraduate or graduate, now study 100% online, so we're a little bit everywhere at this point. We here are very driven by ASU's charter. If you walk down the street, you'll see there's a monument that has the charter on it, which is a way of literally baking into our system our commitment to this work. If you go to any of these 4 campuses, you'll see that same monument that really is the North Star for our faculty, our staff, our students, and the community partners with whom we work. So I'd like to just orient you to that charter because I think it frames why within 5 minutes I would be like, yes, we need to support this important work. So ASU's charter has 3 parts. The first says that we do not measure ourselves by whom we exclude, but instead whom we include and how they succeed. That is our access mission. We believe that as a public university that we have a responsibility to serve the public good by making sure that there is access to folks who are traditionally kept out or don't have the ability to earn, particularly an undergraduate college degree. When I think about the population that you are serving and what you're trying to accomplish, Noella, that is completely in line with ASU's charter and our commitment to access. In that same way, for example, we do not have a question on our general ASU application that asks about if people have a criminal background, because we similarly are looking for people to not be hindered by anything in terms of having access to higher education, particularly because of how we know the ways in which getting a college degree helps to move social mobility, social and economic mobility forward. All right, so the second part of that charter says that we, of course, as a research-intensive university, care about rigorous research, but we also expect that the work that our faculty, staff, and often in collaboration with our students and partners do is use-inspired. And what that means is that we don't just do research for research's sake so that people can read our articles and cite each other and make everybody famous for no purpose at all. Yes, we expect our folks to be rigorous and to be in the top journals and those kinds of things, but we expect that the investment in the community in our research pays back through implications for policy and practice. That means that an innovation like this might be the kind of thing that we would test, that we would figure out what's working and not working to figure out how to make it work better, and if it becomes evidence-based, it ultimately can be spread then to other communities. So again, another way in which this work is very aligned with ASU's charter. And the last part of the charter says that we at ASU take fundamental responsibility for the cultural, social, economic, and overall health of the communities that we serve. And again, I'm going to reference that concept of being a public good. This part of our mission, I think, makes us distinctive in that we say that we're not serving the community, we are the community, we are of the community, we are we, instead of othering a university or othering community organizations, folks living in our local communities. So if we say, if we're for real about this, and we're going to take fundamental responsibility for things like the economic and health of the communities we serve, we have to partner with organizations who are working directly with the community to advance innovative, evidence-based solutions. So I could not be more proud of the work that you've been doing in Utah, that you would choose Arizona to bring your organization here. I want to thank each and every one of you who chose to take time out of a very busy time of year to be here on our campus, and particularly to celebrate the launch of this incredible organization. So with that said, I think I'll hand over to our star of the day, Noella, and welcome everybody.
Thank you so much, Dean Lietz. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel event today. Before I get started, really just want to give a big shout out to the Dean, as well as Marcus and Enrique, the Chief of Staff and the staff here at ASU. They have been absolutely incredible to work with. I have put on a lot of events, and this was the least stressful event I've ever put on. They were thinking of things before I mentioned them, so can we please just give a round of applause to ASU? Also want to say hello to everyone on our live stream. We love technology, and so we are live streaming this event, and I've actually got to pull up my phone in case there are questions for our panelists from other areas of Arizona. So as Dean Lietz said, my name is Noella Sudbury. I'm a former public defender, so I'm an attorney myself, and the current CEO and founder of Rasa Legal, which is a mission-driven legal tech organization trying to make it simple and affordable for people who have criminal records to clean up their backgrounds and get a second chance in life. I've been an attorney for a long time, but I'm new to Arizona. We are launching our tool today. Over the past few years, I have become extremely passionate about serving justice-involved people and using technology to create impact at scale. We launched our software in Utah. Our company's still pretty new. We started in 2022. In September, we launched our software tool, which in under 3 minutes can tell a person just using their name and date of birth what is on their record and whether they might have a chance to be eligible for record clearance. In 1 year, we have helped over 10,000 people across the state of Utah determine their eligibility to move forward with their lives. And today, we are launching in Arizona. So I'm a newly licensed lawyer in Arizona, and over the past few months, I've been flying back and forth from Salt Lake City, Phoenix, spent time in Tucson and Mesa, Tempe, really all over the state, just trying to meet the amazing people here in Arizona. And I've really fallen in love with Arizona. Arizona has some incredibly passionate leaders, and I see Allison Rapping from Arouet. The Pima County Public Defender's Office, which has driven up to support this work. Lots of staff, Suzanne Porter, who helped us get regulated and licensed through the courts. I mean, so many of you, thank you for being here. Thank you for opening doors and for the leadership and the work that you do in the community. So before I introduce our distinguished panelists, who you are here to hear, I want to urge all of you, if you have time, to take a few moments after the panel and walk across the street to what's going on with the fair. We have over 300 people registered to attend the fair, which will offer a free legal clinic for people who have criminal records, fair chance hiring opportunities for people who are looking for jobs, and more than 30 community partners who are offering health screens, Gooder, a pop-up grocery store, just so many different resources. It's been so fun to see how this community has come together to really wrap our arms around justice-involved people and hopefully leave no one today empty-handed. So please go across the street. All right, last thank you. Nyra Jordan, American Family Insurance. Social Impact Institute is one of our sponsors for this event and has really made all of this possible. So I'm excited for you to hear from Nyra and why American Family Insurance supports this work, but can we please give a huge hand to them for making this possible today. All right. We're jumping into the panel. I hope you all are ready. But first, we're going to do some introductions. Okay. Unfortunately, Justice Timmer is ill this morning, and so she's unable to participate in today's panel. But we have 5 other amazing panelists here. So we'll go from this side to the other side. We have Dr. Ryan Thornell, who is the Director of the Arizona Department of Corrections, Rehabilitation, and Reentry. Dr. Thornell has a master's degree in criminal justice from the University of Cincinnati and a doctorate in political science from the University of South Dakota. He comes to us from Maine. He has been serving in the corrections system for more than 18 years. During his time in Maine, Dr. Thornell led significant initiatives to re-envision traditional policies and approaches to incarceration, and he's excited to bring his leadership and ideas to Arizona. So please join me in welcoming Director Thornell. Gotta see who's next to him. Ooh, sorry, guys. Next to Director Thornell is Brandy Smith, a formerly incarcerated advocate and program director at Arouet. Brandy Smith is a 51-year-old California native, but she's been in Arizona for almost 35 years. A lifelong untreated struggle with substance use and a list of white-collar offenses led her to 3 terms of incarceration for a total of 15 years. Brandy was most recently released from incarceration in 2017, and in January 2019, she successfully completed her very last probation term, finally ending a 17-year cycle in the criminal justice system. Brandy now serves as a program director at the Arouet Foundation, where she is responsible for a comprehensive reentry program for incarcerated women. Brandy is passionate about second chances and a vocal advocate for recovery. She's celebrating 12 years clean. Let's have a hand for Brandy. And when she isn't out trying to change the world, she enjoys spending time with her family and her 2 dogs. The voices of directly impacted people are so important to me. I don't believe that we can run organizations or provide effective services unless directly impacted people are at the table. So Thank you, Brandy. I know it takes a lot of courage to come up here and to be here, but really value you and your participation in this event. Okay, next to Brandy, we have an attorney, former prosecutor, turned criminal defense attorney, and director of Right on Crime, Kurt Altman. So Kurt is an Arizona attorney and the current director of Right on Crime Arizona. Kurt has practiced law for close to 30 years. Much of that time was spent as a prosecutor in the Deputy Maricopa County Attorney's Office and as an assistant United States attorney. Over the years, Kurt has conducted hundreds of felony jury trials and has led investigations of criminal conduct ranging from homicide to complex white-collar matters. As a former member of the Department of Justice, Kurt has earned the Director's Award, the highest honor bestowed upon Department of Justice lawyers. Kurt now operates his own law firm where he handles criminal matters and works to advance good criminal justice policy objectives in Arizona and throughout the United States. Let's welcome Kurt. Nyra Jordan is next to Kurt. She is the Social Impact Investment Director for American Family Insurance. Nyra is an impact investor and social justice activist dedicated to elevating the voices of community change makers. Nyra is one of the founding directors of the American Family Insurance Institute for Corporate and Social Impact, a Madison, Wisconsin-based innovation hub founded in 2018 that leverages venture capital investment and transformative public and private partnerships to address major challenges facing the people in the United States. As a community and social impact investor director, Nyra invests in high-impact social entrepreneurs, startups, and strategic partnerships. In addition, she oversees efforts to form collaborations that increase access to opportunity, social equity, and financial mobility, including supporting many individuals impacted by the criminal and civil legal system. Nyra is a TED speaker, and her efforts to support fair chance hiring and capital access to underrepresented founders have been featured in many major publications across America. Nyra, thank you for being here. Let's welcome Nyra. And last, but certainly not least, we have Councilman Kevin Robinson, who represents Phoenix City Council District 6 and is also the former City of Phoenix Assistant Police Chief. Councilman Robinson was actually one of the first people that I met here in Arizona. I had the privilege of hearing him speak at a Phoenix Chamber event and just was so inspired by him and so grateful to you for being here. Kevin Robinson is a current Phoenix City Council member. He's passionate about serving the public and continuing to make his home of Phoenix, Arizona a better place. During his more than 36 years as a police officer, Kevin was awarded the Medal of Valor and the Medal of Merit, the police department's two highest honors for heroism and bravery. Kevin has also been active in Arizona's nonprofit community for more than 20 years. He serves on several key community boards, including the Arizona Supreme Court Judicial Council, a policymaking body that oversees the state's judicial system, the Arizona Post Training Board, Maricopa County Attorneys Community Advisory, and Maricopa County Attorneys Community Advisory Board. He is currently a lecturer here at the college, where he teaches in the School of Criminology and Criminal Justice. Please welcome Councilman Robinson. I feel so lucky to have such incredible panelists here. The format of this event, I have 2 or 3 questions for each of the panelists, and so we'll jump around. And then we're hoping to save about 15 minutes at the end for audience questions, and I'm also watching my live stream in case people have questions online. So let's start with you, Director Thornell. Since starting your role as the director at the beginning, well, when did you start actually? January, beginning of this year, you've spoken passionately about something called reimagining corrections. What in your mind does this mean, and what are the biggest challenges that you see in Arizona?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and speak with all of you. So I'll talk a little bit about reimagining corrections. What specifically it is, why you hear about it here in Arizona, is it's our vision. It's my vision for ADCRR as I came in as the new director from away and really have started embracing the opportunity that we have to change the system and change the narrative about the system. It was so across my first 30, 60, 90 days as the director after being appointed by Governor Hobbs, the effort really turned to how do we take the opportunity that we have as an agency, as much attention as it has, as much history as it has, the reputation that it has, and try to move that forward. If you're from Arizona, which many of you are, you know that most people probably would think I'm crazy for trying to do that. But as I went about the complexes, as I met with community stakeholders, as I heard from several of you in this room, it became abundantly clear that if we were to go about this effort successfully, we really had to start recreating what it meant to do corrections. We had to start redefining what our correctional practices were. We had to really start reestablishing ourselves in the community. And so as that conversation started, as that planning unfolded, as our strategy started to come to light, this idea, this word, reimagine, really was what captivated and encompassed all of that. And so now what we've rolled out across the agency is our vision, along with our strategic plan, to reimagine what corrections means. And that's something that our line staff can grab a hold of and start thinking about how they recreate the work that they do. It's something that our population can latch onto as they start experiencing a different type of corrections. And it's something that the community can buy into. And the other thing that is important for me as an industry is that we not just be expected to reimagine what we do inside the walls of corrections, but we really, as a society, need to reimagine what corrections means in the broader criminal justice system, but also the broader conversation of a community. So often, corrections is charged with this responsibility to just safely and securely house people behind walls and behind fences, and as long as people don't escape and get out early, we're successful, and that's what people want from us. But in reality, if we are going to do something purposeful, we should take that period of time when we have that individual with us and intervene in some meaningful way, provide them access to things that will help improve their lives, and then put them back out into society better off than when they came in. And that's easy for me to say as the director. It's easy for me to charge our staff with really accomplishing, but it's equally important that we have that conversation as a community to start reimagining what corrections means to the public safety world and the community at large and the responsibility that should be placed upon us. So that's probably more than any of you expected to hear, but that's what reimagining corrections means to me. That's why that's what we're rolling out here in Arizona, and that's why we're talking about it not just inside our institutions, but out in the community as well, because it's something that should overlay the entire state and the entire system, not just our one single agency.
If you want to pass the mic to Brandy, you're going to be next.
Thank you.
There are so many different paths to the criminal justice system, and I've heard many, many, many stories over the years. I thought it would be helpful, Brandy, if you could briefly tell us a little bit about your path to the justice system, as well as what you feel like was the turning point for you in your path to recovery.
Thank you for that question. I would say my journey is not any different from some of the 2 million people in Arizona that are faced with some version of a criminal record. I do not have the typical, markers to be headed towards prison. I wasn't abused or neglected, or I didn't live in poverty. I actually ended up being a victim of two things. One of them is I grew up in the 70s and 80s when substance use disorder was not a thing. And also I ended up being the oldest child of a narcissist. And so my story, has ups and downs and all of that, but I think what ended up pointing me towards the direction of ending up in the criminal justice system is, again, not being aware of what substance use disorder looks like, not being aware of the signs of the treatment options. That was really not a thing in the 70s and 80s. And because of the way I was, the people I was brought up by, I headed straight for a group of people that were no good for me, that I knew that they would not approve of. I actually didn't end up in Arizona Department of Corrections until I was 29. I had a lot of chances in the court. I had parents that that bailed me out and tried to throw money at a substance use problem, but Department of Corrections, when I finally arrived out in Goodyear, it was a consequence of my actions. But I would say the turning point, for such a smart girl, I always say I'm a pretty slow learner. I was a repeat offender. And this last time, looking at a 7-year sentence, I was about halfway through it when I kind of had this aha moment. And it occurred to me that statistically, it cannot be everybody else's fault that I keep going to prison. And so taking a moment to look at myself, be accountable for my actions, and figure out what happens next was really a turning point for me. I knew I had to do not just one thing different this time coming home, but every single thing different. And that experience and that testimony is what I share not just with our community of directly impacted people, but also with business leaders and church leaders and really anyone who will listen, because we do recover. And it's important for the community to understand that and to not give up on us. Thank you.
And I actually want to follow up with you on just a couple things that you said. You're not off the hook yet.
Okay. I did try and pass that off. Thank you.
I think it's important to recognize, just listening to you talk, that over 80% of people who are formerly incarcerated report that substance use was at least some part of the reason why they were there. And so it's just an incredibly common problem. Sometimes trauma leads to substance abuse. Sometimes substance use leads to trauma. But when we met initially, you talked to me in quite a lot of detail about what was different for you this last time. And I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about the opportunities that you had while you were incarcerated and the money that you were able to save to have a different release.
Sure. I think I always had access to some form of programming while I was incarcerated. Since the director has been here since January, that programming has, I would say it's expanded at least 5-fold, and we are working on creating even better programming, at least out at Perryville, and I'm sure that's the case across all of the state prisons. But I would say the program that we currently teach inside of the Governor's Second Chance Center, the very first day we talk about values and we talk about beliefs. And I think a big part of the change was, first of all, like I said, being accountable for my actions, understanding that I was the problem, and then sitting down with myself and being honest about what was important to me. This is something that we teach the women every single day. And so understanding that my sobriety was not just a value, it was the top priority in my life, really made a difference for me. As you mentioned in my introduction, coming up December 21st, actually, I'll be celebrating 12 years clean and sober. And that you have to just want different. So to answer your second part of the question about the money I came home with, So the other 2 times I was released from incarceration, I think the first time I came home with $135 and big hopes and big dreams, and that didn't work out that well for me. And the second time I came out with even less. So this time, facing a longer sentence, I was determined to not just make all of the programmatic changes, but also really to put forth the effort towards my eventual release home. And so I worked very hard for the 7 years I was incarcerated and was able to come home with a pretty sizable amount of money, which was a game changer for me. Instead of coming out, yes, I was coming out starting from scratch, but now I had money. I paid cash for my car. I still drive it today. And so I didn't immediately go into debt. I also had money to buy clothes and get my hair cut and some of the very basic things that a lot of people don't have access to coming out with just a little bit of money. So I didn't know how it was, I didn't know it was going to have such a significant impact on me. But again, I knew I had to not just do one thing different. I had to do every single thing different, and that was one of them. Am I done now?
You are.
Okay, great.
For now. We'll be back, don't worry. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, people coming out of incarceration have to work hard. They just have so much stacked against them, and so many people are released with nothing, which doesn't give them much to work with. But I want to turn to Kurt now. So Kurt is, as I mentioned, a former prosecutor and is also the director of Right on Crime. And I'm guessing most of the people in this room wouldn't assume that record clearance or these types of pathways to get rid of criminal records would be any kind of priority for conservatives. But as I've done this work across the country, it is a priority. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what is Right on Crime for those who don't know, as well as why are record clearance policies important to conservatives?
Sure. And thanks again for having me here. It's humbling to be up here with this panel. Crime, for those of you who don't know, I'm not very good with a microphone. Right on Crime is a criminal justice organization. It's a reform organization. I try not to use that word reform very much anymore because it has a bad connotation, but that's what we are. It's an organization that developed and sprung out of the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and the Texas Public Policy Foundation is a Texas-based, I guess, conservative libertarian think tank that does economic work and writes white papers and lobbies different legislatures on, started out primarily economic, freedom type issues, right? Right on Crime developed in Texas out of the Texas Public Policy Foundation when they realized Texas was putting person after person after person in prison. And they were coming out of prison and going back to prison. And they were coming out and going back again, and they were spending a ridiculous amount of money on that. So a few people got together and said, hey, there's got to be a better way. There has to be a better way to do this. So they started to work on the corrections and criminal justice issues in the state of Texas. Long story short, after about 5 or 6 years of doing that, they were able to close 4 or 5 prisons and save like $4 billion or some crazy number with a B on it, right? And they're like, oh my goodness, maybe this isn't so bad. And Texas is not a soft on crime state. I don't know if any of you know that. So after that, Right on Crime expanded. We're in about, 12 states now. I work here in Arizona and New Mexico, and then I work nationally on some prosecutor issues with Right on Crime, pushing I guess, conservative or economic-based or, frankly, human-based reforms. We like to say we're the adult in the room, right? We don't think everybody should be let out of prison because there's some people belong there for a while. We don't think nobody should go, but we want to be smart about this, and we're trying to do that around the nation. And we've been super successful. Like I said, we've moved into about 13 states now. And why? People never think, and I do this at the legislature here, people never think a conservative organization would be interested in criminal justice reform or record clearance. But really, it comes down to a couple things my colleague said. Brandy used the word accountability, and the director used the word, which I bet he was not even going to know that he said this, industry. And corrections really is an industry, right? We're saying you have to hold people accountable. And when I became a prosecutor, as a young prosecutor, I prosecuted everything from drugs to capital murder cases for a long time. And I was like, people need to be held accountable. People need to be held accountable. And then I would see people that would come out, and I would prosecute them again. And I started to think, wow, man, why am I prosecuting them again? Did I not give them enough time? That wasn't the case. It was what we were doing, how we were abandoning, easy for me to say, how we were letting them go with no help, we just forget about them, right? And what conservatives forget when it comes to criminal justice is, yeah, accountability is important, and we're going to hold people accountable. But what we don't think about is the redemption part. Conservatives, from religious conservatives to any of them, talk about redemption. Everybody deserves a second chance. And when I go down to the legislatures and I talk to Republicans and I say that, sometimes the light bulb goes off and they're like, oh yeah, redemption. We asked them to do something. They did something wrong. We held them accountable. They did what they were supposed to do. Now we just let them go. And as I grew as a prosecutor and then became a defense lawyer, those issues became very, very important to me. And I became very passionate about it. And I said, what is the product that this industry is putting out? And the difference with this product is it's a human product. And what are we putting out? We're putting out in Arizona people that go back 48% of the time. We got to do better than that. And I think everybody, from the right to the left, to the prosecutors, to defense lawyers, everybody needs to work on this, and that's what we're doing in Right on Crime. I run an initiative for Right on Crime with prosecutors, national elected prosecutors around the country, and try to highlight and show the innovation that some of them are using to keep their community safe, because number one, we want to keep the community safe. But we also want to keep families together, and we want to be stewards of the taxpayer money. What's the budget, Director? I'm not even going to ask you. 1.3, 1.4, 1.6 billion dollars. What are we getting for that? Goodyear puts research and development into their tires every year to make them better, stronger, cheaper, more affordable, last longer. Why don't we do that with corrections in the criminal justice system? So that's why I'm in it. That's probably too long and too much, but thanks again for having me.
No, that was perfect, and thank you for talking about the impacts on public safety and the economy. Nyra, American Family Insurance is a business, and I think the role of business in this issue is such an important thing to talk about. Because if you take a state like Arizona, where there's over 2 million people with criminal records, and you see all of the economic expansion across the state and all of the jobs available, if we automatically exclude 2 million people from our workforce, that's really not good for employers, and it's not good for the economy. And American Family Insurance, I think, is a huge leader in this area, as well as JP Morgan Chase, and I see Deanna Murphy here. But I would love for you to talk about why American Family Insurance cares about this issue, why you founded this institute, and why you're here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us, by the way. American Family Insurance, so a little background on who we are to help kind of frame why this is important to us. So American Family Insurance, we are actually, our home is Madison, Wisconsin. That's where we're headquartered. We operate in 19 states across the country, including Arizona, as an American Family brand. So you see what we call our roof line in ads and commercials. So that's the brand that most people are familiar with. We also have a few operating companies, the General being one of those companies that's kind of under our American Family group of companies. But when we think about American Family as a brand, being in Madison, Wisconsin, I don't know how many people are familiar with Madison, Wisconsin. A few hands here. College town, go Badgers, right? Falls on many, many lists of best places to live in the country. And so we're very proud that that's our home. 10 years ago, however, a report was released in Madison, Wisconsin called the Race to Equity Report. And if you've ever been to Madison, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, it's surrounded by lakes. Everybody should visit there, wonderful place to be. But this report kind of pulled back that curtain to say this is absolutely a wonderful place to be unless you're Black or brown. And on every measure of economic mobility, academic achievement, home ownership, salary achievement, career attainment, Black and brown communities fared far beyond white communities in Madison. With us being a major employer in Madison, this made us have to look to say, okay, we're very active in our communities. We give philanthropic dollars to a lot of wonderful organizations doing great work, but how could this be? And so as an employer, we had to think about how are we giving and what is our role in really looking deeper at these disparities, writing a check and saying, look at how we support education and look how we support this was no longer enough for us. So it was actually in 2016 that our CEO asked us to think differently about how we give to our communities. And so this made us start to dig. A few of us were on this small team thinking about what could we do differently from a philanthropic standpoint. And we started to look at different social issues. And Madison is about 70 miles from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And Milwaukee is home to one of the most incarcerated zip codes within our country. And so we thought, we got employees there, we have customers there. These are our communities, and so this is not a topic that we can continue to ignore. And so as an insurance company, we thought a lot about, okay, we're a highly regulated industry, we're a traditionally conservative Midwest company. This is not a topic that should we be stepping into this? And the resounding response after we did the research to understand, at that time, 70 million people in the country have criminal records, that access to employment is a barrier, and we're not even talking about incarceration, we're talking about a record, that this was not something that we could continue to ignore. And so our approach at the Institute, which was launched in 2018, with the sole purpose of us to think deeper about our engagement in community. So we call it, we borrowed it from Brian Stevenson with the Equal Justice Institute, like, you gotta get proximate, you gotta get in community, understand what those issues are, and have the community inform where we show up. So you talk about why we're here. We're here because the community said you need to, expungement is important, and this is something that is beneficial to help with access to housing, access to employment, access to education. And so we launched this in 2018 across the country to engage in not only supporting startup founders, which is how we met actually, in our support for justice tech. So we invest in technology that is specifically aimed to center individuals that have been justice impacted to solve problems that are faced by those individuals and their families and their communities. And also we engage in these strategic partnerships, so in organizations, for-profits, nonprofits, academic institutions that are close to the work, that understand the issues of individuals that have been impacted by the justice system. But then for us, we're like, this is wonderful, we're engaging in a community, but what about us? What about our own house? And so we had to turn that mirror and said, do we employ justice-impacted individuals? And that was the question I asked, and people didn't really know. We had never really looked at our HR policies and our systems in that way. And so we pulled back the curtain on that. And so we are a fair chance employer, something that as an insurance company, many folks said this will never happen. You will not be able to do this. And I will tell you, we employ very intentionally in career pathway roles in our IT area, in our claims area, individuals that have been justice impacted and have a criminal record. So for us, this type of work to get records cleared, we know that there's that direct connection to the quality of employment, the type of roles that you can receive, and how life-changing this is for families. So I forgot your original question. I think I answered it, but that's kind of why we're here today and why this topic is so important to us.
And that was perfect. Again, you mentioned so many things which are real, and I really appreciate you highlighting the racial and ethnic impacts of this issue. The statistics are really, really sad. 32% of the United States population is Black or Hispanic, but they make up 56% of incarcerated adults. And I'm sure, Councilman Robinson, as a police officer, you saw the impacts of this. I'm hopeful that you can talk a little bit today about, put your former police officer hat on and talk about your interaction with justice-impacted people, as well as when someone cannot do anything about that criminal record, how that impacts public safety.
You know, first, thank you for having me. But I want to go back to something mentioning, if I could, quickly. Then I'll come back and talk about unintended consequences, because I think that. Okay.
Mine is working better than yours.
Oh, unintended. But first, I teach you and Dean in the back. She's still back somewhere. Is my boss. Ask ourselves a question, or I ask my students a question. Our justice system is fair to everybody. When I first started teaching, forward, we're in 2023, single person. Usually 50, 60, 70 kids in them. I say kids, young adults. So it's put my exercise where I make them the president of a family-run business. They employ 100. Opening for sort of an entry level. And I have two people. Oh, hold it closer. Okay. I make myself one of them. I'm sorry about that. Usually microphones and politicians go one and, hand in hand. But my students that I'm somebody who had been formerly incarcerated, nonviolent felony, but I'm out of jail, out of prison. I've done my time. I'm applying for a job, and the other job has never had any kind of interaction with law enforcement. Now, I ask them truly, who are you going to hire? Probably about 95% of the time, they're going to hire the other person. They're not giving the chance to the person who is equally as qualified, but didn't have that in their background. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I think it's critically important that we understand what happens with folks and the chances they are not given when they have a criminal background. Now, to your original question, I just wanted to tell that story, use it as a bit of an anecdote, but to your original question, the 36 and a half years with the Phoenix Police Department, everything from an officer, a sergeant, lieutenant commander, and assistant chief. So I had an opportunity to do a little bit of everything over those years. And one of the things that law enforcement has come to realize, the unintended consequences of our actions. Because a lot of times, yes, you interact with people who have criminal records, and as a young officer, and I think I've gotten better at it with age, with a better understanding, with more education, and more interaction with different types of people, I came to realize that you couldn't fall back on what might have been a stereotype or something that you thought, you just thought that's the way you should act or treat somebody who may have a criminal background. Those are the unintended consequences of our actions. Somebody who may have been arrested, incarcerated for a nonviolent type of crime are then still going to be treated a little differently by most law enforcement officers. And I was one of them. I'm not going to lie and say, I treated everybody the same way. If I found somebody who had a criminal record, I got on the guard. I was ready, because you made an assumption that they were going to do something or they were capable of doing something. Those are the unintended consequences of the way we policed in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even into the 90s, and I think some would argue even to this day. But I think law enforcement has gotten smarter about understanding how we interact with people will determine whether or not we re-interact with them. It's all about, when the director talked about what rehabilitation within the Department of Corrections, nothing could be truer, simply because if we don't get it right there, then we're going to repeat the same thing over and over again, which is unfortunate. But throughout my law enforcement career, what is the most unfortunate thing is that people who have a criminal background are treated differently. You know, if you're at a crime scene, you may not have had anything to do with anything, but you were there, but you have a record. There's a chance, if you're on probation or parole, that that's going to be reported to your probation or parole officer. That could be problematic. So we have to, especially in law enforcement, we have to take a hard look and a couple steps backwards and realize what are going to be the unintended consequences of our actions if we move to the left, if we move to the right, forward, whatever it may happen to be. So again, like you, I hope I answered the question. A little long-winded I felt, but I think it's important that we understand, and the director mentioned also, and others have talked about how working with the community is most important. Law enforcement's doing the same thing these days. You know, I'm a student of history. Robert Kennedy said it best. You know, you get, and I'm paraphrasing it, but you get the kind of criminal justice that you deserve. And so you deserve much better, and I think when you speak out, get involved, we have a tendency to change the way things are now.
Thank you for all of those remarks and for sharing and highlighting some of the assumptions I think we make about someone when they have a criminal record. And I'm hoping that we can return to Brandy for a minute. I told you I'd be back. As a justice-impacted person, I really want to ask you about some of those assumptions. Tell us about some of the barriers that you faced as someone coming out of incarceration when you tried to rebuild your life.
Absolutely. So if there are 2 million people in Arizona that have some form of a criminal record, there are also 40,000 local, state, and federal barriers against those people reintegrating with society. So they can be anywhere from employment to housing to licenses that they need for different businesses. It could be, like Councilman Robinson said, it could be a collateral consequence. We only serve women, and we have women coming out of the criminal justice system getting not just on their feet, but stable and thriving and getting their kiddos back, sometimes out of the foster care system, sometimes back from other family that have been caring for them. So great, you're checking all the boxes, you're doing all the right things, but because of your felonies, you can't take cupcakes to your kid's school. You can't go with your kid on a field trip. So those types of collateral consequences are devastating our community. They are really holding people back from doing the basic things that people who have never been arrested just take for granted. I would say for me, the biggest barrier, I want to just reiterate, was my own self. So once we got that barrier out of the way, you know, I came out of incarceration this last time with a really stacked resume, really had a lot of valuable job skills. Immediately when I was released, I started looking at Indeed and LinkedIn, and I was like, you know, based on my resume and my skills and my experience, I'm looking at a six-figure job, $100,000 a year. That didn't turn out to be the case for me. I got the door slammed in my face over and over and over again because all of the things I had on my resume all had to do with inside sales, customer experience, and I have all white-collar crimes. My very first job when I came out this time, doing all the right things and everything different, expecting a different result, my very first job, I was making $12 an hour. And if I didn't have a second income in my house, I would have failed. So employment is only one thing, and we've made great strides with all of the various community partners and businesses and all the folks that we work with, but we still have some work to do. It's understanding the difference between a wage and a livable wage. It's great that folks are willing to, you know, be second chance employers and hire at, you know, $15, $16 an hour. What you might not be aware of is a livable wage in Arizona is over $21 an hour. So there's a gap there. If you're making 15 and 16, you're making too much to get any type of state assistance, but you're not making enough to live. And so that's just one example of some of the barriers that I've faced.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We are almost out of time, and we've only had one question per panelist. So I'm going to kick this next question to anyone on the panel. And Brandy mentioned fair chance employment and the importance of hiring people with records. So for anyone on the panel who would like to comment, would love to hear what your thoughts are. Excellent, Director Thornell. On fair chance employment and how it's related, why it is a criminal justice issue.
Thank you, and thanks for the microphone. I've learned that if you don't grab the microphone, it will work its way away from you, so you don't get to say what you need to say. And I'll just be very brief, but, for me, fair chance hiring is really just about an opportunity, and it's not just an opportunity for a piece of paper to get slid across somebody's desk, but it's really about an opportunity for an individual to get in front of somebody else and share their story and share that they're more than just what it might say on a piece of paper. It's something really important to me in the role that I'm in, but also in the work that I do, because people think that the director and, senior level people at a corrections agency don't really get in touch with what's happening on the ground. But for me, it's important to know what's happening on the ground in our institutions and who's in our institutions. And that's important to me because they're humans in our institutions, right? It's our staff members, but it's also the population that is a human. And we need to treat them like humans. And when I go walk through our institutions and I interact with people, that's how we need to interact with them, is at a human level. And what I learn is their story, who they are, what brought them there, but really what's motivating them to hopefully go in a different direction. And what we don't talk about, because we don't need to, is what brought them there from a criminal standpoint, because it's not important. They're there, they're doing their time, they're doing something hopefully purposeful, and they're planning for what's next for them. And so for me, I just bring it back to that idea that a fair chance is really the ability to share that with somebody who can make an important decision about them, hopefully for a livable wage. But without a fair chance, they don't really get an opportunity to share that side of them.
I was going to steal the mic, but I better pass it.
No, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, because I didn't want her to move to another question. For me, coming from the employer's perspective, for us, I think we run into those situations where having that opportunity for the individual to share their story is necessary, and it's important when we're thinking about looking for the skills and the fit, and if something shows up on that background check that we need to have that. But I have like 6 thoughts that just convene, so my words got tangled. It's about the hiring the top talent and the right person to perform the job. And so thinking about the skills that individual has coming into that role in the same context of anybody else that's coming into that role. So I tend to be less concerned about the story around the history of your experience as an incarcerated individual, and more about the talent that you're bringing to do that role. Because I feel like it's so important to get away from, we sit in HR and it's, okay, what have you done the past 5, 10, 15 years for a system that didn't exist 5, 10, 15 years if you're in an IT role? And so that skills-based talent, I think I'm saying all this to say, thinking about corporations needing to shift how we think about HR and the questions we're asking and what we're looking for. Is the individual in front of me the one that can perform the task that I'm hiring them to do? And if that's a yes, and we've offered them that role, and now everybody is in the same place, that background check comes back, if that offense has nothing to do with the role that I'm looking to hire, I don't care, frankly, and I shouldn't care. And as a leader, thank you for that, and as a manager, I shouldn't even know Like, I shouldn't even know that. Like, I feel like that's why I get conflicted in a lot of ways around the story, because I understand the importance of the story, so I'm not debating that at all, but I get conflicted because I feel like I shouldn't know that story unless that individual, when they're brought on my team, chooses to share that. And now we're having a conversation, and that trust is built. And so I feel like as an employer, that's how we need to think differently about this. When we talk about the number of individuals that are impacted with a record, that's talent that you're not thinking about. And if we're talking about we're struggling to find that top talent, there's a whole pool of individuals that are incredibly talented. So sorry, I went long-winded there.
Speaking about all those thoughts in your head, they're all going around. But, I'm going to start out being a little bit of a downer, right? Because people ask me, and I know one of Noella's questions was like, what can the legislature do? What can government do? And the issues are very nuanced. I'm going to give you an example. I was running an expungement bill here in Arizona a number of years ago. Right on Crime was a big backer. I'm lobbying it. I'm running in and out of lawmakers' offices. And one of the lawmakers, a chairman of a committee, the most important committee for this bill, looks at me and goes, Kurt, I agree with you. I think that's all great. But to go to the council members' scenario, he goes, what if I'm a family-owned business? I've worked my whole life, my whole family to build this business, and this person comes in, and another person comes in and applies. Don't I have the right to hire who I want? And I'm like, well, yeah. He goes, so shouldn't I have the right to know about who I might be hiring? And he kind of stumped me, right? With that bill didn't pass that year, by the way. Kind of stumped me because I'm like, well, what can government do then? Like, what can the legislature do? Because we know that if you have a job, if you have a place to live, you're in a much better position of not recidivating, right, or whatever that word is. But like, what can we got to be able to do something. So what we've done over the years, this is the good part of the story, is we've started to do things that help incentivize, is that a word? Give incentive to businesses like American Family Insurance. By passing things in Arizona called a certificate of second chance. It doesn't wipe out your record, but it releases employers from liability for hiring someone. Helps them with their insurance rates, right? And I've had employers tell me, I would hire folks, but I can't pay my insurance rates. So we're doing things like that. Government and the legislature can incentivize people and companies and encourage them through their policies to go out there and hire folks, fair chance hiring, right? Also, government can get out of the way. There's a lot of companies out there, there's CEOs in the state of Arizona that I've talked to that go, yeah, I need workers so badly to do this. I would do anything. Like if they're qualified, I don't care what they did in the past, as long as they're good and qualified, I want to give them a job. But where are they? How do we do that? What am I supposed to do to find these people? Can anybody help me? So getting the word out, like we're going to do, I think, across the street, right, is really important too. So, I mean, if you know somebody that runs a mailbox store, say something to them. If you know somebody that runs a bigger company, let them know, because I think there's more employers out there that will hire and use fair chance hiring than we think of, right? So the incentive, government should get out of the way sometimes, but I think there's ways that they can incentivize people, give them benefits, tax breaks, whatever it may be. My conservative friends would be like, no tax breaks. But I mean, whatever works, right? So, I mean, it's a nuanced issue, and I'm glad we're here talking about it. So thanks again.
I think it is a whole topic in and of itself, and I agree with what's been said about it here. I attended an event here in Arizona put on by Arouet a couple of months ago, and somebody, I love this people first language, right? And I think fair chance hiring for me, as I've done a lot of work on this issue in Utah, is about seeing this person as a person first and being willing as an employer to hire one person. If you're not sure how it's going to turn out, just give it a try. And there's a lot of national research now coming out about this issue that 85% of HR managers say that a person with a record is as qualified, if not more qualified, than a lot of the people on their staff, but their retention rates tend to be much, much longer. And this is something I was talking to Leah from Arouet about just yesterday. When you have a record, you know what it feels like not to have a job. And even though it's unfair, you've got something to prove to yourself, to everybody else, that you're worth it, that you are going to be a good employee. I tell employers, don't hire someone out of charity. Hire them because it's good for your business. And I think as an employer myself, who employs many people with criminal records, they are some of the best employees that you will ever have on your staff. And thinking about tackling this whole topic might be daunting, but hiring one person and giving them a second chance is easy. It's something that everyone can do. And I think this is why these conversations are so important. As Kurt was saying, like, how do people know? I've talked to many employers in Arizona. I talked to one just a couple days ago. I said, how many open jobs do you have? And the guy said, oh, over 1,000. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Do you know how many people in the state of Arizona are looking for work and would just be a fabulous fit for your organization? And he said, well, I've been posting on Indeed, I've been getting the word out there, but people are not applying, they don't want to work. That is not my experience with people with records. They want to work desperately, and they have so much to contribute. So I think raising awareness, having that dialogue, talking about how do you do it safely, how do you consider people with backgrounds, why do you have this policy? Is it needed to ask about criminal records at all? If it is, how do you do it safely? And that takes work, it takes change. But I think the employers that I've worked with who have done it have seen the benefits to their organization. And so I'm hopeful that this is one of many conversations that we will have about this topic. So we have just about 10 minutes left today. And I want to open it up to the audience for any questions. Also, those of you participating online, I will watch the chat if anyone has any questions for any of the panelists. So please just raise your hand. We can bring the mic to you.
Hello. This question, I think, is for Director Thornell and Mr. Altman. What statewide policy changes should we be considering, in the next legislative?
There's a lot to do, right? Again, that research and development, we can make it better. And I try to break down policy things for the legislature on what I call front end and back end. Why are people going to the director's facility? Why are we putting them there? And what are we doing once they're there and they leave? So there's plenty of policy work to do on both sides. I think we need to take a very hard look, and this is long term, right? Because lawmakers would be laughing at me if they heard me say this, but I think we need to take a long-term look on why and what our sentencing structures are and why people go to prison. And I think there's a lot of, maybe not a lot, but I'll say there's some people, I kind of think a lot, that go to prison that probably there's better alternatives somewhere else. So that's kind of a front-end approach, and we need to look at that. And that's difficult and nuanced work to do, right? So we need those people to look into that. On the back end, we really need to look at a couple things. I don't know what I'm going to hear from the director when I say this, but we're one of the last, I think one of the last 2 states that still has truth in sentencing in Arizona. If you get 1 year in prison, you do 85% of your time before you're eligible in Arizona. If you get 20 years in prison, you do 85% of your time. If you get that 1 year and you get a GED, you go to work, you learn a skill, you are an ideal prisoner, you do 85% of the time. If you don't do anything, cause problems in the prison, don't try to better yourself at all, you do probably 85% of your time. Well, what incentive is it? What incentive does that give you to do anything worthwhile for yourself while you're incarcerated, right? So I think we need to really, and we're slowly doing it, but take a look at truth in sentencing, which was implemented in Arizona in 1994, and reinstitute parole. There's something I wrote once. I don't write very much. It's just bullet points. That's how I write. That talks about the advantages of parole. People think, oh, parole is bad. There's significant advantages to parole, and I think we really need to take a look at bringing that back, because that's going to help people do better and have incentive and get out and be better contributors to society, in my view.
I would just add, from my vantage point, from the department's vantage point, the work that we're doing isn't really work that needs to be legislated to fix the issue, right? We know what we need to do internally. It's really about building a system in order to carry out that work from a system that wasn't designed originally to do it. So our goal when we go to the legislature and when we will spend the next 4 to 6 months there is really just to educate and inform. There's a whole lot of misinformation. There's a whole lot of people that think they understand corrections and what's going on and what direction we need to head. And it's our job to make sure they have the right information when they're making those decisions. And so that's really what we'll be aiming to do. And really helping people understand that when you're putting a policy in place, regardless of what that policy is, it needs to be informed by really what the work is that's happening, and we just need to have the conversations that allow for that. So that's going to be our effort over the next 4 to 6 months versus pushing any specific legislation. We just want people to know really what we're doing and why we're doing it.
And I might add something myself, now I've got the microphone back. But I attended a panel once, thank you for the question, it is so important, where this question was asked. And I'll never forget the response to the person on the panel that said, if you really want to do something about the criminal justice system, you should focus your efforts on getting kids ready for kindergarten. And I had never thought about it that way before, and I think an important thing to emphasize here is that in the United States, we criminalize poverty. And this is really a systemic issue that starts with kids not having any opportunities to succeed. And so I think as a community, as a country, we need to start realizing that and support low-income families. And over the years, as I have worked with people in the justice system, my own mother grew up in poverty. What I saw in my clients as a criminal defense attorney was people who were poor, people who were struggling, people who had nothing. And what do you expect them to do when you're born into nothing? You don't have a shot in life to begin with. And so I think that's something that's always, always important to emphasize. I want to kick this question to Councilman Robinson because you asked about the state legislature, but having worked for a county city government, I think there are also things that can be done on the local level. And I'm wondering if you can talk about your priorities as a councilman and what the city of Phoenix is doing around this issue.
Okay, thank you for the question. From a priority standpoint, City Council obviously regulates or legislates for the city of Phoenix itself, the fifth largest city in the United States. Priorities have been dealing with the homeless issue. We have just a short distance away from here. It's throughout the valley, actually, throughout the country, but more specifically concentrated in the downtown area. And we talk about substance abuse, we talk about all these other issues. What we have to understand is we have to get help to the folks, the type of help that will allow them to take a step out of where they are at. People don't wake up and say, I want to be homeless today. It doesn't happen. It's out of a set of circumstances or happenstances that they end up there. We need to look at that. Is it substance abuse? You have to understand that how we deal with that is not by throwing people in jail, and that's that part of where law enforcement is really starting to understand it a little bit more completely. It's about getting them the help that they need to get them out of that situation they happen to be in. And homelessness is another issue. I'm an eternal optimist on so many things. And just the other day, and it would be inappropriate for me to mention the individual's name or his business, but my staff and I sat down with a developer. This guy does all kinds of significant work around the country and around Arizona, but he came to us, to my office, and he has a proposal for and wants support for, and I'm going to give it to him, for workforce housing. And quite honestly, it's in my district, and my district happens to be Ahwatukee, Arcadia, the Biltmore, North Central Phoenix, arguably the most affluent part of the city. But he has a plan that would start to integrate within that area affordable housing, or housing that's affordable for folks who have those jobs that pay $20, $25, $30 an hour. And we have to think of what that does. What it does, it makes them more complete. I learned as a police officer, you never take someone's dignity and respect away from them. The minute you do that, they're going to fight you at every step of the way. You give people the respect that I think everybody is due. And it's the same thing about home ownership, be it a condo, an apartment, whatever, a house, whatever it happens to be. When people have an opportunity to have something that they can call their own, that they can then build upon, you know, I think that's what we have to do. And my priorities within the within City Council is to make sure we're doing the right things for all the right reasons. So housing, homeless issues, there's a myriad of things that are out there that we're dealing with, but we have to keep in the back of our minds that it's about giving people the opportunities to do better. Give them, because like you said, you know, I have yet to meet somebody who wakes up and says, I'm going to do something, I'm going to go to jail. They don't say that. You know, you got to give people something they can work toward, something they can be proud of. And so that's what I hope we're able to do.
And unfortunately, we've run out of time for questions. Does anybody on the panel want to offer any concluding remarks? All right, Brandy. Brandy's going to have the last word.
Concluding remarks. I would just say this has been an amazing conversation. One of the challenges that our community being directly impacted community, we have an obligation to stop living in the shadows, stop being separate, be part of the public safety conversation. We have an obligation to start trying to bridge this gap that has existed in Arizona for like 50 years. And I think this panel is a really great place to start. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much to our panelists for your time today, and to all of you for coming out to our event. Please have some lunch. Lunch is somewhere in this room, or it will be. And please, if you have time, go across the street and see the amazing partnerships from the community, the amazing people in our community who have criminal records, who are there to access opportunity. Thank you so much.